Good day. My name is Willian Cartagena. I'm your new weekly Usala Speaks from Usala Media in Philadelphia host. We will be covering local concerns, especially in the Latino community of Philadelphia. Today I have with me Mr. Fernando Mendez, and we will be discussing the past election on November the 2nd. Mr. Fernando, on November the 2nd was election day in Philadelphia. We had went throughout the Latino community and acknowledged that there were very little turnout, if any at all. We went to several divisions in the 7th, 19th, 42nd, and 43rd Ward. And I have with me some of the numbers that represent that election. For example, on the 7th Ward, only 5.87% out of 13,144 registered voters, only 600 went to the polling place and 167 mail-in ballots. Now, in the opposite, we have on the 9th Ward, where they have 12,000 registered voters, 3,008 actually went personally to vote, with a total of 5,461 votes. What do you think about those numbers, Fernando?
Well, I think they're obvious and they have always been small relative to the number of people in our communities. We have had for many years a large number of Hispanic voters that have not gone to the polls. So.
Well, why do you think that when people come to the mainland, the vote turnout is lower? For example, if we go to the island of Puerto Rico, almost everyone comes out to vote. But once they come to the mainland, they do not vote.
I understand one of the problems or it used to be, I don't know if the new generations are in the same mold. It used to be that many of the Puerto Ricans who came here thought the U.S. was a temporary state. They were not planning to remain in the United States. And some of the sociologists attribute their no vote to the fact that they don't feel they belong. They don't know enough about the system. They don't know the politicians. They don't understand what they're doing with their vote here. On the island, they knew exactly who they were voting for, what they would get out of the vote. They knew the politicians, they knew the issues, and it's a different situation when they come here.
Well, how is it that they do not know the process of election? However, they use other facilities and other organizations that belong to the United States. They learn how to use those needs, but not election. Do you think that they're not being well educated or well said of what's going to happen on election day?
Well, we do need, first of all, we need for every politician who might be listening, we need to motivate the voter. We need issues that will attract the Hispanic vote. Hispanics will vote if they see that it will benefit their pocketbook, that they will benefit, it will benefit their housing. They can have better schools. So those are things that need to be emphasized by anybody who wants to get the Hispanic vote.
Well, on November the 2nd, we walked around the Barrio and we saw most divisions empty. We also saw a lot of trash, a lot of abandoned buildings, little jobs. So do the Latino community understand that if they do not come to vote, the community will remain as such because the vote is very important in deciding how much funds come to each community?
Bueno, la importancia mía es que todo el mundo salga a votar. Soy community person for many years, mucho tiempo. Pero a través del tiempo, como que la persona, la comunidad como que se restrae de no venir a votar. En vez de venir a votar. Porque si mientras más personas vengan a votar, más son las cosas buenas que nos pueden pasar como es a la comunidad.
But that's not new. I mean, the trash and the drugs and the crime in the neighborhoods, that's not new. It has been there for quite a while. And we keep electing the same politicians over and over, and nothing happens. We know where the corruption is. There's one particular district where people know the names, the how and when the vote is miscast or corrupted, and nothing happens. It keeps occurring votation after vote after vote.
Well, do you know that the reason they remain in the office is because people do not come out to vote? If they come out to vote, then they will be able to make the difference and make the changes. It's just like any other employment. If your worker is not working suitable to your needs, then you terminate him and get someone else to do the job correctly.
Right.
So that is the same with the politicians. If they stay home and do not vote, that will not make no differences. In order to make the differences and the changes, you must come out and vote.
So, si tenemos que salir a votar, porque como dice mi compañera de trabajo en las elecciones, nosotros tenemos una gente que nos representa. Tenemos un Ángel Cruz, tenemos una María Quiñones, tenemos gente que están aquí trabajando para nosotros, pero nosotros tenemos que apoyar a esas personas, tenemos que trabajar con ellos en conjunto, porque los que legislan son ellos. Nosotros solamente llevamos nuestras quejas. Nosotros solamente queremos llevar qué es lo que va a mejorar el vecindario, qué podemos hacer.
Well, but how many? I don't think that there's a great amount of teaching, explaining to the Hispanic voter about what it means to vote, how you vote will affect the election, the importance of using this tool to replace politicians who are not doing their jobs. I mean, all these things that are sort of common sense. When you vote, it's important. When we say you vote, every you vote should count. That's what we mean. But if you don't think your vote is important because the politicians do not present issues properly, then you're going to stay away.
Well, as I was walking through the street on November the 2nd, I asked several community residents were they coming out to vote. Some of them told me, I did not know today was election day. Hoy fui a votar.
Pues no, porque estaba haciendo una diligencia por eso mismo, por mi identificación, pues estoy en ese proceso.
Pero sabía que hoy era el día de las elecciones.
Pues no sabía eso tampoco,
¿Cómo no? ¿Por qué no lo sabían?
porque no me informo mucho en los televisores.
Ok. Y si te hubieran notificado, te hubieran dicho que era hoy, ¿hubiera ido a votar?
Seguro que sí, claro, ¿por qué no?
¿De dónde tú eres?
Estoy de Puerto Rico, pero estoy pasando unos problemitas ahora, pues estoy bregando para lo mío y pues soy de Puerto Rico. Pero me gustaría con mucho gusto votar, pero no tengo ahora mismo la identificación.
How is that happening where there's such a large community not knowing when it's election day? Do you think that some information is being withheld from them on purpose?
Information not withheld on purpose. I think probably not announced through enough media, radio, television, flyers and their doors, newspapers. One of the problems we have right now with media is that people are so much involved in social media and they are not necessarily get an explanation of where the vote is when they are only paying attention to Facebook and other platforms.
Well, since you mentioned Facebook, do you think that maybe we should start educating them through Facebook or social media?
Well, that's one possibility. But how can you ensure that they're going to hook on to Facebook, to whatever issue you want to address on Facebook? You need credibility. You need a politician they respect, and they see the name, they see the face, and they say, "Oh, I want to hear what this guy has to say or this woman has to say."
But I also heard a lot through the community that they say, well, they don't do nothing, so why come out and vote? What do you think about that opinion?
Well, there are a couple of things about this. If they do nothing and you can verify that, then you need to cast your vote in that direction, like vote against them, vote for somebody to replace them. If they are not doing the job, you replace them. But the other part of that is that you should be well informed on the issues. And that's the problem. A lot of people vote and they have no idea what they're voting for sometimes. There are propositions, one and two to do this. For instance, in one of the previous elections, the governor lost power because people didn't know what they were voting for, and they voted against an issue that gave more power to the GOP legislature in Harrisburg, and the governor lost power.
Well, I understand what you're saying because me myself, I'm a former politician. I was a former candidate for state representative in the 7th Ward in the 7th District on the 181st. And although I've walked the streets and I knocked on many, many doors, after the election, many people came and asked me, when is election day? Meaning, again, after all that hard work, many people did not even know when was election day. So what else could be done to further educate these communities?
Well, obviously, it's a two-part thing. We should announce more in different venues, as I say, flyers at every door, newspapers, whatever means in the media. The other side of that is, if the population want to do something to have an effect on the vote, to have an effect on who will conduct the business of the state in the future, they have to be involved. They have to take steps to learn about the different issues that affect them in the end.
Well, one of the concerns that I heard on November the 2nd was that the new generation is getting less and less interest on elections and politicians. Bueno, ¿cómo se llama?
Evelyn Medina,
Evelyn, ¿cuál es su posición aquí?
en la cargada de la máquina y en la mesa ayudando con Baringo.
¿Qué usted piensa de la numeración de gente que han salido a votar?
Si sale más, hay más votos, si sale más gente a votar.
¿Cuánto tiempo usted lleva haciendo esto?
Ya hace como del año pasado.
¿Y cómo le gusta?
Me gusta, es bueno porque me entretengo ahí trabajando aquí.
¿Y cuál es su beneficio de trabajar aquí?
Ayudándolo como viene para hablar español, yo le ayudo con el español, si es para otra mesa voy y le ayudo y trabajo en la otra mesa y en la máquina.
Muy bien, gracias por su tiempo. What can we do to attract the younger generation?
Wow, that problem is deeper than just Philadelphia or the local Hispanic community. The fact is, our youth in general is not being properly taught about their civic duties, about their rights, about the need to vote and to exercise their right to vote in order to have the government that we want.
Well, Fernando, currently in Pennsylvania, possessing any amount of marijuana is a criminal offense unless you have a medical marijuana ID. It's a misdemeanor. Although it's a misdemeanor, it carries a $500 fine and up to 30 days in jail, although you may be eligible for conditional release. On November the 2nd, question number 1 on the ballot was, should Philadelphia legalize marijuana? And it was yes, won by a high number. Belinda Collier, do you vote?
All the time,
Why do you come out to vote personally and not the mail-in vote?
because I want to voice my opinion.
And what do you think about the question on the ballot today about legalizing marijuana?
I love it, and because it helps a lot of people.
In which way?
She was 82, and they gave it to her because she has cancer.
Well, now they want to legalize it for recreational. What do you think about that?
Well, that's everybody's choice, because some people do it and some people don't. You know, I mean, it can't be too bad. They're using it for sickness and getting people well, so it can't be too bad for recreational.
Do you think that if they legalize marijuana, it will be less crime in the city of Philadelphia?
No, marijuana ain't doing it, the people doing it. You know, marijuana has nothing to do with what they're doing. Matter of fact, you better give them a lighter, it might calm them down. You know?
What do you think about legalization of marijuana in Philadelphia?
Well, it has become more prevalent throughout the country, the use of medical marijuana. It used to be just recreational. People just, it was declared against the law for good reason in Western states. The Western states believed that the Mexicans coming into California and Texas and Arizona were bringing marijuana. and they were afraid of the corrupting influence of weed into their societies. And that was the reason it was declared illegal, because it also supposedly brought more crime with it. People would be addicted to a drug and they need more money to buy more of the drug, therefore, there's more crime. That has always been one of the unintended happenings with marijuana, with weed.
So do you think the legalization of marijuana in Philadelphia will reduce the crime rate or increase it?
Well, that's to be seen. Now, here we have one of the problems is it for medical reasons only, or is it a kind of just free for all? Anybody can have it. You don't have to have medical reasons,
Well,
right?
that's what the election was about, to
And
legalize it.
So that's what we want. We want it legalized for what reason? One, to tax it. Number two, to control who sells it and how much you sell. Will that do away with the legal market, you think?
Well, just like alcohol, it's legalized, but they still have what they call moonshine, which is homemade rum and liquor.
Yeah.
So it's not always going to be totally legal and going to kill the underground world of drugs.
Well, I think the drugs will still function the way they were before. The thing is, no longer young people who just carry enough for their personal consumption, if they are not marketing it to others, if they are not selling as a business, young people who just use it for personal reasons would no longer have to end up in jail, which is one of the reasons for this legislation. I think a lot of people saw the vote in that sense, that young people will not end up in prison anymore for small amounts of marijuana they use.
Well, so that means the legalization of marijuana could decrease the amount of prison, the overcrowded prisons, and also the overcrowd agenda of the courts. Is that what you're saying?
It will decrease that. I think that there shouldn't be as many people going to jail for small amounts of marijuana. If that is the main reason so many jails are full of people, especially Hispanics and blacks, then this will reduce the number. It sort of stands to reason. I don't know if that would happen, but that's.
Well, although it was voted to legalize marijuana, does not mean that marijuana is legal in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. It still has to be ratified in Harrisburg.
Right. There was a bipartisan bill that was introduced, legislation was introduced to legalize it in Pennsylvania. I don't know what that is. I don't know if there's a vote yet, or when the vote will take place.
Now, how do you think will be the selling of the marijuana? Do you think they're going to have just a marijuana store, or how would you think they'll be selling it?
Well, marijuana will be dispensed the way they're doing it now, which has worked in the West. California, Oregon, many of the states in the West already have a system where you can go to a dispensary and buy the marijuana. You don't have to go to a black market and see. You can just present your ID and you can buy it. And some of that is in Philadelphia now. You can find some dispensaries. There are very few, but you can find places where you can buy it legally. So if you need it, if you're one of those people who need it for medical reasons, there's absolutely no problem. Now, what will happen is, what if it's just for recreational purposes?
Well, therefore, the question was on the ballot
Yeah.
to legalize marijuana for recreational purposes and not just for medical purposes.
But it has to be approved by Harrisburg now.
That's correct.
So in essence, the vote, all it did was say, yeah, the public is in favor, we approve. But now you, the senators and representatives in Harrisburg, do something to make it legal.
So what do you think is going to happen in Harrisburg?
The Republicans are opposed. I don't think it's going to pass.
You say that the Republicans are opposed to the legalization of marijuana.
Yes, they are.
Do you know why perhaps is that reason? Why is there reason for opposing the legalization of marijuana?
They use sort of the traditional reasons that it causes more crime because people would get addicted and they have to go buy more marijuana, and therefore it will increase crime. Also, it's a bad example for the young people to say that now we're all smoking weed. That's also one of the reasons that many people oppose it.
So what's your opposition between marijuana, legalized marijuana, and alcohol, which in Pennsylvania happens to be a monopoly? Alcohol is sold by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I understand. But that's one of the things. I mean, is it a myth that marijuana sort of keeps people away from working because they don't have the same energy or the same interest? Because it creates a passivity in an individual. If you smoke marijuana, you become an addict. You don't want to do anything but smoke marijuana.
So what do you think is going to be the difference between illegal to legalization?
I think that the clogging of jails and courts with when you arrest people for possession of small amounts of marijuana, that should end.
Let's see, and going back to the election, the importance of the election, several years back, we voted whether the Philadelphia traffic court should be run by the state or the county of Philadelphia. We have people in other counties, Berks County, Luzerne counties where no one has ever been to Philadelphia, voting on the needs of Philadelphia. So this question was legalization in the city of Philadelphia. What do you think if they put that statewide when the concern is in Philadelphia?
Well, that's one of the things when you start splitting the law and sort of, we have these imaginary boundaries between Philadelphia and the suburbs. I mean, the thing is, the law should apply to everybody in the state, not to a particular city. And we know one of the disadvantages Philadelphia has is that it's a democratic stronghold, and the legislature is mostly Republican. They're going to vote against Philly most of the time.
Well, do you think that perhaps the mayors of Philadelphia and council should lobby more in Harrisburg and make it so they can understand that it's a Philadelphia concern and not a statewide concern?
That's one thing. And the other thing is that, listen, politicians, our local ones, from Philly, from Pennsylvania, they should advocate for federal laws that apply to everybody. That way we don't have to worry about just Philadelphia or Camden. It's just a general law applies to everyone equally.
Very good. Now, going back to the numbers in Philadelphia, let's look at the 19th ward. On the 19th ward, out of 9,252 registered voters, only 580 went out to the polls.
What percentage is that into the population?
That would be 7.54%.
That's why every time we have elections, the politicians will not spend money in Hispanic media because they see us as negligible. They are not going to get too many votes out of the Hispanic area. So as a result, we suffer both ways. We don't get to have an effect on the political body, and also we lose money on the business side because they don't invest money here.
And that goes back to our earlier say where if they do not come out to vote, they will not get enough funds to change the community.
Right. So the chicken and the egg question. If you go out to vote, you have an effect. But if you don't go out to vote, you're going to suffer the ill effects of your lack of vote.
So therefore, we have to further educate our Latino communities the importance of coming out to vote.
Absolutely. And this is one of the ways to do it. A program like this where there is information about the vote, what is happening, what are the consequences of voting or not voting, then the public should know. But this kind of stuff is like a drop in the bucket. We need to do it everywhere. We need to do it through newspapers. We need to do it through television, with social media, everywhere. There should be a concerted effort to inform the public.
So do you think that we need to be more active and more aggressive in trying to educate the Latino community?
Absolutely. Not only in Philadelphia, throughout the state, throughout the country. Otherwise, we're going to fall prey to the charlatans. I mean, why would people still vote in Texas for somebody like Ted Cruz after what he did? He left the state when everybody was freezing. He went to Acapulco. We have to learn how these politicians affect our daily lives. And we should elect the right guys, but we won't do it unless we're well informed. So how do we do that? It has to be from school, from early on, civic responsibility taught to us, our kids. And there are other things too that interfere with the lack of information is that poverty. In many families, they're concerned more about their daily bread and not so much concerned about political issues.
So do you believe that political should be involved in the curriculum in schools? And at what grade would you say that would start?
See, that's another. I was an educator for 35 years. I'm telling you, I don't want any politicians telling me how to run my school.
Exactly, but you want to, in order to educate them, then we have to bring politics into the schools.
No,
So how will you say that we will educate them?
no. You use the laws that exist to educate the people and say, this is what you should do. This is how you vote. This is where you go to vote and why you should vote and why you should learn the issues. I don't bring a politician to campaign for his side of the issue. I don't want to bring him to school. Maybe at the upper levels, if there's a debate and you can organize a debate with the people of different views, you do that. But in general, I'm not going to bring in a politician to teach my students.
No, not that you will bring the actual politicians to the school, but bring the concern and the education of the political word and how to come and vote.
Absolutely. There are books that tell you what to do. There's history. There's books on citizenship, what to do, what your duties are as a citizen. And that's what people need to know.
Well, that's a total different topic that we probably could bring in the future is why are they not allowing the immigrants to vote? Do you think that the immigrants should have the right to vote?
After they complete the 5 years requirement to be here as residents, yes.
Okay. Now, this is today's ending of our program. Now, I want to thank you for allowing us to come into your television, to your view, and I hope to see you very soon again in Usala Media with Cartagena Speaks, the Community Speaks, hosted by Cartagena. I hope to see you again, Fernando.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Very good. Nice to have you.